Okay, so we have only Frederick, who is an external person here. The rest of us are pretty much internal. So, Frederick, is this your first time joining these workshops, or you've been here before? We've had about 5 already.
Yeah, so should be my first time. I responded to the invitation you sent in what is the platform for the hub leads, and then I responded.
Well, thank you. Thank you for honoring the invitation and coming in. So, if you can check the chat, Keneric has posted a link to the app we are using for this workshop. And then if you click on it, it will take you to, if I should share my screen quickly. And hi, Daniel. Thanks for joining in.
Hello. Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. So we have only one external person here, which is in the person of Frederick. So I'm thinking maybe we can just kickstart, and then as we go on, if people join in, we'll see how to carry them along, right? Just so that we're able to do something meaningful at least. So Frederick, if you click on that link, it will bring you to this site that you're seeing, which is a pretty easy to use.
Yeah, I'm trying to
And hi,
follow
Sean.
through.
Thanks for Okay. So on this website, Sean, I know I've seen you on this course before. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, you're right.
Great. So you are pretty familiar with this website and what we are going to do here, right? Or
Yeah,
I can
I
still.
am.
Perfect.
Yes.
All right. So it's Frederick being new. Frederick, so this is what we are going to do. We have gathered a lot of information over the past few weeks. We normally did a lot of workshops on using Miro, and then Tivo, who is here, used the data points collected to build this beautiful interface that you're seeing. And with this, we are going to have a look at some challenges, and then discuss some of these challenges, and at the end of the day, get to prioritize which ones should probably be paid more attention to, and stuff like that. So from the home page, quickly, there's the onboarding tab, there's the identification tab. The onboarding is pretty much for if you want to read more about whatever we are doing. So if you want to understand governance management framework that we have created, you can also have a look at it. And also there's also the metrics, challenges, and analysis. You can look at it if you want, and then identify some recommendations. But pretty much these are the steps that we are going to do with this particular workshop, given that you are new here, right? So we'll start off with understanding some governance, which I believe already you've attended some governance workshops, so you have some pretty much good information or intel about Cardano governance at large. And then there's this governance measurement framework that we came up with. I don't know if you have had a chance to read or take a look at it, but it is also something that is there. And then there's a metrics, challenges, and analysis. And then, of course, we'll identify some recommendations and then prioritize submissions for these recommendations. So down here, there are a couple of resources that you could actually use to, widen your scope of knowledge so that you're able to contribute meaningfully to this workshop. And you don't necessarily have to be reading these at this point. You can read them later on, and then provide your recommendations as and when you have the time to do so. And the tools we are using is that we're going to look at some challenges, as I said, and the challenges. If you're able to identify some recommendations, then you submit these recommendations, and then we look at these recommendations that are received, and then we prioritize them as well, which is through voting. And then, of course, we have a lot of workshops that we are doing. This is the seed session. There are about 4 more to come probably in the next few weeks. So if you click here, you'll get access to all the outstanding workshops that are yet to be held, and then you can participate effectively as well. So we'll start off. I would like us to start off from looking at some challenges that have been identified so far. And if you click on challenges, you realize that the key governance actors we know so far are just about 4, which is either holders, GREPs, SPOs, and then constitutional committee members. So because we have already had some workshops already, like I mentioned, 5 already, some of the data points have been populated because we have had people come in to share their experience and their observation. So if, for instance, if you look at the ADA holder metrics, you realize that we have about 3 challenges here. And these are challenges that we can, choose to look at. And then, if you have more like a solution that you would want to recommend to these challenges, you provide it as time goes by, right? So, and then for DREPs, there are about 4 challenges that are open. If you look at it, here's how these challenges came up. So if you look at the left side, there are some charts here, which when you click gives you a pictorial view of what is happening. I think since January last year to January this year. These have been generated by Keneric to give us a pictorial view of what is happening. So, for instance, if you look at the delegated voting power among DREPs, you can have a feel of this chart to understand exactly what is happening in terms of voting power distribution among DREPs, right? I'll just brush through this quickly so that we can look at some of the open challenges and then discuss some of them, and then be able to also make some recommendations if possible. And then there is a coefficient for DREPs, which is DREPs need to control governance actions. This is also here, and a couple more here, right? So these are all challenges that are open that we are going to look at if we have enough time. Then for SPOs, there are 2 open challenges now that you can look at. So this is also the metric that you can look at to, sort of give yourself a fair view of what is happening and then be able to recommend if you have any. And then there's a CC, which also has 3 so far. Right. So now, having had a look at these challenges, there is if you hop over to the prioritize, there are already some recommendations that have come through so far. But for today, some of them have been discussed already, on course. Some of them are also yet to be discussed. And then some of them are still receiving votes, which is up votes and also down votes. Like I mentioned, at the end of the day, there's going to be the need to vote on which recommendation should be prioritized and which one should not necessarily be prioritized. So it is important that we pay attention and contribute through the various steps. So I would like us to start off from the challenges. And so maybe today you tell me, my team, I have Keneric, I have Daniel, I have Tivo, I have Maureen on standby. Which challenge do you guys think we should focus on today? Okay.
Yeah. So I've been with a few those workshops. I will perhaps we can look at the SPO and CC metrics this round if you want to. I don't know if anyone in the crowd here are stake pool operators. I see yeah, some new names here. That's cool. And if you are not a SPO, that's not it's not so important. Just you as an ADA owner also can
Joker Pools here, which is
give
me,
recommendation
the
as well.
stake pool operator.
There we go. Great.
Perfect. Tivo, I see that your hand is raised.
If I could suggest, in the prioritized page, go into that page and open the filters for the recommendations. Based on the last workshop, filters are above at the top of the list of prioritizations. So if you scroll up, see that the filters button on the right side and next to the most votes. And I added the challenges part of filtering. So if you are ticking these boxes, and maybe what we could do for the first few minutes is we use this filtering mechanic to find what kind of interests you, like Eric mentioned, let's target SPOs, for example. And the first category, if you filter out SPOs and then you look at specific challenges, this is tags, but the category is above. So the tags are different from the categories. But this will help to also see that even if right now you selected SPO tags, there are only 2 recommendations. And if this doesn't address, none of them doesn't address, then maybe it's a good point to create a recommendation right now and use the upvoting or downvoting. This way we will be able to collectively perhaps change the sorting. Considering how many people are in this call, we could, make a sentiment for any item to be the top prioritized thing.
Great. Thanks for that input. So do we all agree then to focus on SPOs for this call? If yes,
let's dive into it. So on the identify page, you see a chart there. You will see the SPO metrics and see a chart there. And as a stake pool operator, what does this chart tell you? And what kind of recommendation would you guys do to make this chart look better? I don't know if anyone, Joker, have you been around any previous workshop and been following us through all the work?
No, this is my first workshop joining with you guys. So I'm kind of looking at this data for the first time.
Oh, nice. Welcome. Fresh eyes on the topic. We love it. In regards to the report, so far we have identified that it is, as a stake pool operator, difficult to participate. I would say it's a friction to participate in governance. And one of those we have identified is that every time Joker wants to participate in governance, he has to dig deep in his drawer and get his cold keys credential. He don't like that very much, especially if he has a block producing node. Isn't that right, Joker?
That is absolutely right. Not to mention, that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of other things that make it highly complicated, and it requires a significant amount of time. It's not just that it requires the cold key, but it requires a significant amount of time. And if you get any of the steps wrong, it's a complete nightmare trying to figure out where it went wrong.
Would you be kind to elaborate that? You said the list is long, so I put forward perhaps something like KES keys and catalyst keys. You have perhaps a other perspective on, let's say, because as you can see on the chart, stake pool operators, they let's say jump on it in the last minute very often to participate in governance, particularly on those that are required by SPOs to pass. We can see that they always abstain basically those SPOs who don't want to have anything to do with governance or choose not to participate is increasing. And yeah, I was wondering if you like have any recommendation to the report as an SPO, like how can we improve governance on Cardano?
Honestly, my biggest recommendation would be to just make it simpler for the SPO operator. I understand that the view a lot of times is that the SPO community is super highly technical developers, but that's not always the case. So a lot of the times they're telling you, hey, you got to do it, this way. You got to follow this step and this step and this step, and if you don't know that, then you got to go out and find help, right? Or let's say you created your wallet through the CLI. And so you're just using an air gap machine instead of a ledger. Now that's a whole nother level of complication. And there is no official script to be able to write that transaction. So then it's okay, well, are you going to use a script that was created by somebody in the community and you just have to trust it? Or are you going to create your own to be able to interact with that? And so I think when you add that complexity into it, along with the amount of time that it really takes to dive into each one of these topics and to truly think about how it's going to affect the protocol long term, that you're dissuading people that don't have a large amount of stake from participating.
Very, very fair point. I just out of curiosity needs to follow up. So you said that you need a certain level of knowledge. Where would you go to acquire such knowledge, and what do you think of the quality of where you are going to look for knowledge?
Well, I mean, that's kind of the problem, right? Now, maybe I'm just ignorant to the fact of it, but I don't know where there's any clear documentation even. When I say that you just have to, go find the knowledge, what I mean is you literally have to go out and do the research yourself to find out what's going on. I haven't seen any complete documentation for every, type of situation for an SPO. Now, let's say you want to spin up a Cardano stake pool. There's plenty of documentation when it comes to that. Hey, you can use this. There's multiple different guides you can use, but when it comes to actually participating with governance, can you point me to a guide for a Cardano SPO?
Just out of curiosity, like on a level from let's say 1 to 10, how deep in the weeds to put like do you consider yourself, Joker?
I consider myself. What do you mean by that? And actively participating with governance, or do you mean just actively participating in the protocol? Because those are two different things.
Yeah, as a stake pool operator, you are keeping updated. I believe you are playing around with Sansonet and hanging around Mike and stuff like that. So I, from my understanding, I would like safely guess that you are pretty like if you like pretty deep in the in the game, both from a technical perspective and the governance. Perhaps I'm wrong, but that was my guess.
No, I mean you're accurate. So I stay up to date on the node versions, and I update all of them. There's, like I said, there's ample documentation on that. So again, is this being put on YouTube or anything?
Yes, this is a public workshop.
Okay. So I just want to be careful how I phrase stuff. You know what I mean? If it's for public consumption or private consumption. So what I'm saying is, if you want SPOs to take a more active role, you actually need to give them the tools to make this a lot easier. Right? You have guild operator scripts that people can use to go set up things like a stake pool, to set up DB sync, to set up all of these different services that you need on Cardano. However, you can't find that when it comes to voting, right? So that's what I mean. Like, if you want there to be mass SPO voting, you need to make documentation for it, and you need to put it on the GitHub. You need to put it in guild operators. Those are the places that people are looking for it. I'm sure the information's out there, but it's all segmented.
Yeah, thank you. I know like IOG, they have these SPO calls and yeah, Discord. Do you think it's sufficient to let's say that's where SPOs get together, or should there be some other way SPOs could share their findings, or should we have one specific place for, let's say, SPO on the internet?
Yeah, I think that the IO Discord is a great spot for everyone to get together, you know, and then to be able to put out links there. They have an operators channel. I know that they do the monthly calls, and you get a lot of SPOs that join those monthly calls. So that would be a good spot for it to get foot traffic and for people to see it. But again, you know, I think that's the biggest problem, is just the fact of when you run a block producing pool, you do not want to have any security risk. You don't want to risk your validation getting messed up. So you're very cautious about doing any of that. Now, again, just speaking personally, I haven't looked at the documentation in 3 months. That's why I started this with, you know, maybe there's something new out there now that I don't know about.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, sorry, Ken. I see that pseudoscientist also has his hand raised. I want to acknowledge him. Maybe he has something he wants to add to what Lee is saying. Hi, pseudo, come in.
Good morning, everybody. Am I coming through?
Yes, you're coming through.
Beautiful. Yeah, traveling, so things are a little interesting for me right now, joining on mobile. But I think Joker highlighted an interesting thing that, you know, I think there's a built-in assumption that stake pool operators are highly technically inclined, but that's not always the case. And the fact that SPOs are involved in a voting role in governance kind of highlights that the people that are running these stake pools are qualified to make assessments on parameter changes and things of that nature. And what we see through the numbers is that there isn't a high interest in a multitude of stake pool operators in governance. So I think ultimately we might have run into the fact that the assumption that SPOs might have been the best role to make those determinations might have been a little incorrect. But, you know, I would say that, you know, there is a multitude of different types of stake pools and levels of security. For me, I have an air-gapped machine and I have my cold keys there. To me, it's kind of like a very complicated hardware wallet, you know. So for the fact of maintaining security, I don't care if I want to place a vote that I'm going to go through my security protocol to secure my keys. That's something that, you know, that it's kind of inherent with the way that you have set up your pool. And, you know, Calidus keys are a good option, I think, but I don't think the technical barrier isn't necessarily the obstacle here. It's interest and participation. And again, if we just want to blindly activate participation in SPOs, you know, the question again, opposed to DREP voting, is the quality of the decision being made. So we can incentivize SPOs like we do the other bodies of governance, but do we just want SPOs voting? Or do we want the people that have the best say in parameter changes making these decisions?
Yeah, Adam, are you able to speak, Adam? Because I see you put forward some comments there in the chat. Would you elaborate on those?
Yeah, I was just saying I'm disagreeing with this premise that, oh, the SPOs weren't a good group to be responsible for Cardano governance. That's because we designed a system where they've been marginalized and pushed to the edges and not asked to make any sort of meaningful changes or votes. And so now SPOs don't know when they need to vote outside of a hard fork. You know, like we buried which handful of protocol parameters SPOs are allowed to have a say in within a 30-page constitution document. And then you have to read that constitution to figure out which protocol parameters you're supposed to vote for or required to vote for, and then look at every single governance action and figure out if one of those protocol parameters are actually adjusted. You know, and you know, to echo what Joker said, that the tooling is not there to say, hey, SPO, there's a protocol parameter or there's a vote on chain that needs your action. And so how do I know? And then because this has only happened, I think, once or twice in the entire year and a half that we've been doing this governance thing, that we've actually needed SPOs to vote. You know, why should I care? Why should I be deeply involved? It seems like it's nothing but a run on the treasury is all that we developed governance for.
Yeah, Sido. Thanks for that, Adam, for adding on to that. Sido.
Yeah, just a clarifying point there. I'm not saying SPOs aren't a qualified body. I think that was a built-in assumption in the governance aspect that was assumed before we had any measurable information to see what SPO participation could look like, you know, so
I mean, the SPOs, in my opinion, are the most agile, responsive group that exists in Cardano, but we developed a governance system where they don't actively participate. They participate once a year, twice a year. So of course, they're not finger on the pulse of all these little back and forth discussions and everything else going on, because we haven't had them be meaningful participants in the governance system that we designed. So I think it's unfair to say, oh, well, like, look at how they've reacted. So I'm glad we didn't go that way, or, you know, we didn't have measures. SPOs have upgraded within days the entire network to get it ready for hard forks and when bugs have been discovered and everything else. So they are 110% a qualified body. We just marginalize them as a voting entity within the system.
well, as a stake pool operator myself, you know, I would say that many of the people that do care about those parameters are also DREPs or have the option to become DREPs. So the fact that representation doesn't exist at all levels, we have the mechanism to do that. And I think deciding on how that participation happens, I think we're looking towards those solutions. So again, I'm not saying that SPOs are not the qualified body. I would say that the governance as organized was kind of making assumptions before we actually had how that process actually takes place, established and tested. So if we knew that, hey, SPOs don't have a good communication line to understand when their votes actually are required, you know, we could make those changes before we launched governance and created the aspect where treasury withdrawals are the primary function. So I think we're actually, Adam, we're mostly in agreement. My criticism is that the governance process took on assumptions that really didn't play out to its intended outcome.
Well, I think there's another facet there that you're ignoring, which is that there were cries about conflict of interest even before governance went live, while it was being developed, that how dare an SPO also serve as a DREP or also be on the constitutional committee, because they're already an SPO and they already have this power within the ecosystem. And so I wouldn't be surprised, for one, if a lot of SPOs didn't want to pay yet another 500 ADA deposit to have to cast two votes with two different sets of keys, to Lee's earlier point. And then also to avoid this perception amongst the community that might harm their stake pool operation if they were viewed as being a bad actor because they have conflicts of interest and they're serving within multiple roles. So I think SPOs kind of got the short end of the stick on multiple fronts when it comes to governance.
You are mentioning a very interesting topic there, Adam Dean. So SPOs, they are incentivized financially to attract a delegation. We had some feedback that some SPOs might not vote because they are afraid of losing delegation. What do you think about that?
I mean, yeah, definitely, right? Like, there's things that I can say as Adam Dean that I would never put out from one of my companies because it might hurt my company's profit center, right? And so SPOs are actually small businesses. So why would they take a risk and get involved and be part of this conversation and drama that might harm their business just because? So yeah, there's definitely, that does paint a good picture of one of the dangers of all. Like, everybody always shouts incentives, if we do incentives, we'll get more voting. But as soon as you incentivize, now there's financial repercussions to every time you say yes or no on something. So that creates more conflicts potentially than it solves.
Yeah, so this is a side quest here, but so like, if you compare it to traditional, let's say, democratic values, and you're gonna find like the SPOs there. There is actually, let's say, not any, let's say, equal out there. As far as I have found, it means that we like to say that SPOs are like the security, like the police in the ecosystem, but the police is not. They don't need the delegation, and when they arrest someone, they do not lose their let's say, funding. If you understand. Perhaps like a little bit far out. Could we like say that perhaps SPO voting might be like an architectural mishap in the ecosystem, like by design? I don't know. I'm just throwing out an idea here.
I mean, yeah, we see it every time there is a vote that comes up, right? Oh, like such and such SPO hasn't voted for the new constitution, move your delegation. Such and such SPO hasn't voted for the hard fork or hasn't upgraded their nodes, move your delegation. So yeah, like we have already, even historically before governance, put SPOs into this position where, if they don't go with the status quo, they risk harming their financial bottom line. And so it's unsurprising that when we ask everybody to go into the IO Discord and IO advises that everybody should upgrade to the latest node, we don't get any pushback because people are afraid of losing their financial benefit, their delegation, if they don't get with the program. So yeah, there's a serious element of like outsized lobbyist power within the ecosystem in general that I think we haven't really ever seriously considered or thought about.
Nice. Pseudo.
Yeah, I mean, on the flip side of that, isn't that also a potential compromise on the role of the SPO itself? If a decision that might be in the best benefit of the chain itself, but would result in the loss of a mass delegation because the mass amount of delegators do not approve of that, right? Doesn't that offset the technical understanding that an operator might have? You know, for me, I operate a stake pool mostly because my back-end services as a developer rely on talking to the blockchain. So the SPO is just like, hey, I already have the node. I'm here to secure the network. The financial incentive of making rewards isn't my primary motivating factor. So on the flip end of that, any incentive that we already have in place kind of could be a point of compromise for that role. And as we have seen, based on the data that has actually taken place, if we require SPOs to participate, and participation has been historically low, I think that's something to consider, that the overall structure might need some reworking. Maybe not the fact that they're not qualified or anything, but that the structure we are forced to participate within doesn't allow us to have quality decisions come out of that.
Yeah. Just like on a high level. So like when you look at the ADA owner, D reps, SPOs, and CC members, they are currently the only one that has a financial penalty if they how can I perhaps do a controversial vote with a rationale, for example. Joker, you have some spicy stuff to add to the latest debate here, recommendation?
I don't have that much spicy stuff to add, except for the fact that I kind of agree with a lot of this sentiment here. Outside of the tooling, I think that is a lot of the hesitancy, right? Because number one, governance has a bad reputation right now. Everyone feels like the treasury's just being drained. But number two is, you know, a lot of SPOs don't want to be politicians. They don't want to get involved in this Twitter drama or this Reddit drama, right? So they would sooner just stay back and keep their business the way it is. Because the moment they step out there, they have much more to lose than they do to gain. But again, I think that might be a messaging thing, and maybe we need to reiterate now that everything's been ironed out, what things the SPO actually votes on, because to my understanding at this point is just protocol changes, which really should not be that much of a topic that people disagree on, right? It's not like we're awarding funds or anything. So if the conversation is how do we get more SPOs to participate, you know, maybe we need to change the messaging up a little bit and have them realize that, hey, this is strictly protocol. And I think that if we were to build something into the node, right, to let them know that, hey, this is going on, this vote's coming up. And again, put it in the operators Discord for IO, put it everywhere that the operator goes and checks documentation on when to update their node. Why we don't do that is beyond me. But if we want them to participate, that's where we should be putting it, where they're looking, because the vast majority of people are not going into governance to find out what the latest drama is. They're trying to avoid most of that.
Yeah, well said, Joker. Adam.
Yeah. So what I wanted to say before reoccurred to me, and this is something that I've brought up somewhat in some of CIP discussions and things like that. But there was a decision made at some point at some level above my pay grade that it was too dangerous to add a default yes option for voters. So we have an option where every voter can default to no, always. We have an option where voters can default to abstain, always. But we don't have an option where people can be yes by default and only cast explicit no's. And this is one of the only governance voting systems in the world I've ever heard of where you have to actually go and pay a poll tax every time you want to share your opinion as part of governance. You have to pay at least a transaction fee in order to make your voice heard. So there needs to be enough reason for you to actually go out and say yes, because you're no by default. So if you don't care or don't want something to pass, there's no incentive to actually come out and explicitly say that, because by just being inert and not taking action, you are essentially signaling, your level of interest or involvement, or whether or not you care that protocol parameter gets changed. So requiring people to pay in order to vote means that I'm only going to go out there and get active if I actually really care about this. And I do believe it's firmly in the best interest of Cardano, because by just not voting, I can stop something from passing, essentially.
Nice. Another thing here is to collect recommendations. So we have you, Adam, we have Joker here, and Sudo. Who else is SPO here? Oh, we got that. What kind of, if you had the superpower to decide, what recommendation would you give for change in regards to SPOs and governance? I will put you on the spot, Joker.
You're making me think. I was standing here thinking. This is going to be controversial, but I would say that outside of Artworks, I think that should really be the only protocol that SPO should be voting on, is when we're actually changing the node and how the protocol functions. Outside of that, I don't think SPO should be involved in any other way. Just my personal opinion, right? That's as me, Lee. So that's what I feel like. I feel like our job is to protect the network, make sure the network is healthy enough to grow, make sure the nodes are online, and make sure everything's safe and block production stays up. Outside of that limited role, I don't think we should be going off and being politicians, is my opinion. I think that's better left to politicians.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate the honesty there, Joker. Sido.
Yeah, kind of to echo that, I think that I stated it before, that the assumption that SPOs were probably a good technical layer for analyzing these parameter changes was kind of built into our governance model. Whether or not that's the case, I mean, that can change every time we cycle out SPOs. So that's going to depend. But what's interesting is that the users of the software are voting on the patches that undercut the underlying security of the software they're using. So if you were doing software, if you're a software company, you wouldn't canvass your users for patch upgrades. You would have people that are security minded and all of that analyzing, and you might have bug reports from the community that are submitted, but the community itself isn't voting on the security patches that happen, that the underlying software ingests. And it's kind of interesting that we're, for the node version, we're having, or any of these things that, SPOs are kind of involved there. Because technically we vote based on what infrastructure we decide to run, right? There's going to be a minimum node version that we can use to support the current protocol. And we technically vote by our actual infrastructure. We can decide, hey, you know what? Cardano said we need to use 10.6.1, but you know what? I'm staying on 10.1.4. And we create a fork by de facto, by just not changing our hardware. So considering that these things are not likely to take place anytime soon, the current recommendations I would suggest is signaling maybe in the wallets and other tooling, providing more scripts. The people that are doing ridiculous CLI, multi-sig, and script-based management likely have the understanding of how to vote and build the CLI commands, right? So more attention should be put towards non-technical SPO users to get the signaling that, hey, this is a parameter that you vote on. And maybe this happens at the wallet level. So coordinating with the top wallets to have some kind of signaling built into the actual wallet interfaces to kind of alert the SPOs and, make that mechanism a little easier to integrate with. Because if you're running CLI and air gap machines, you probably don't have many issues building a script and, dealing with the CLI directly. But if you're looking at anyway, in the future, if we're trying to onboard new SPOs and have more non-technical users participate in the securing of the blockchain, I really don't think the technicality is the barrier here, right? I really don't think that's a big thing. It's creating the desire for people to participate in governance. And, Adam brought up a bunch of reasons why people aren't incentivized necessarily to stick their head out in the water. But, I would say that, the technical things aren't necessarily an issue. And, we are actually voting on so many of the protocol level things based on our infrastructure that we decide to run.
So we have in this tool, you see Tavo, he is hammering on the keyboard here, and I pinned it to the top here, the link, by the way, for you guys coming in late. You have the option to go to prioritize. You also have the possibility to add recommendation if there is something there not possible that you don't see there. And then you have the possibility to upvote and downvote. This here. What is most important? It will be very much appreciated if you guys tap the link there. If there is something recommendation not seen, add it in there and give your votes. And what we will do with that data is that in the Beyond Minimum Viable Governance report, we're going to put forward a bunch of recommendations in regards to governance. We will see perhaps if we make it, we can make a CIP for some, contribute there, or at least we will highlight in the report what we, beyond the reasonable doubt, needs to address when it comes to governance. I'm talking over my head now, Daniel.
No, that's all about right.
So rest assured, you might be to a lot of workshops, but I would say this is the one of those that really counts. So thank you for participating. Let me see here, just following up in the chat here. We were supposed to look into CC metrics, but since we had such a good vibes here and we had SPOs present, and So good debate. We pushed on it. We're gonna do more workshops. And for those of you who are interested, we're gonna cover the CC topics, but you can also contribute. You can go in there and look at the Constitutional Committee metrics. They have some fine charts there as well. I don't know if you are possible to show it, Devo. There we go. So what we have chosen to do is to measure how quick CC members vote on different governance actions. We have also looked into constitutional the abstain rate, and also looked into the amount of rationale puts down when the CC member votes. If you would kind to do some ASIC recommendation here, I know Adam Dean is here. You are ICC member. I see B here. Who else? You guys have been, you're like the OGs in governance on Cardano, participating, running pioneer shops and stuff like that. Now we have like had governance running for more over a year. They have from the feedback that we got, they are identify that there is a lack of information and sometimes very difficult to evaluate the constitutionality of that. And that's why you see a difference in time responding, than time it takes for CC member to respond. And one thing that's also been echoed, not only amongst D-reps, but particularly also among Cardano Constitution members, that there is a lack of compensation, and that makes it difficult to, let's say, prioritize all the work. And I think the last one on top of my head, some of CC members also gave us feedback that some issues, something they have to vote on, perhaps contain technical difficulties and stuff like that, and they do not have, let's say, access to pay or ask a third party for it. What do you call it? SME, subject matter expert opinion on it. If you guys have some recommendation there, it would be nice. So, okay. Am I missing anything here now? Daniel, Devo, Nana?
Nothing from my perspective. In terms of timing, the project ends in June, so that's when the final report with recommendations are coming out. We already have over 100 different ideas coming up from the community, so we're looking at those collectively. Super cool to see so many different things, and it's most valuable when you hear from the people who are dealing with it directly. So I love hearing from the SPOs, because I'm not an SPO, so help us see what's important. Keep an eye on that. Drop the link into the chat. That's very kindly. Keep it out for the project.
Yeah, thank you. I think you chopped up a little bit at the end there, Daniel. But I think you said that we'll put the link tree in the chat here. So there we go. I was just guessing. I see Rodrigo there. We can create a new working group with civics committee to coordinate the solution to the problems being filtered. So in the team here, we have been debating like where, let's say, to push the recommendation that we have, and how can we have the community, let's say, pick up on those recommendations, either as a CIP or something. And I am a voting member in the civics, so I have shielded the possibility, because civics committee, they are aligned and have working groups like just starting out DREP compensation or compensation, so that's cover something that we have disclosed. So yeah, we definitely going to bring the report to the civics committee and intersect board. Yeah, Joker.
Yeah, I just sorry, I'm at work. Sorry about the background noise. But I just wanted to bring up a point too about participation. Why don't we have a social app for governance? If we really want participation, why is this not at everyone's fingertips? And I don't mean to be so frank, but if we truly want participation and we want people involved, why is this not on their cell phone? Why can I not log into a Cardano social app and see what the hot topic going on right now is, and how many upvotes it has, and how many downvotes it has? And then all the stuff people cares about surfaces right to the top, instead of having to go to Intersect, log into Intersect, go through this dashboard, you know? So that's that would be my number one complaint, that we don't have a social app for governance. And we're a year into this, and every time I bring it up, everyone goes, it's complicated, we're gonna get there. But how do we get participation? It's kind of like a chicken or the egg thing to me. Sorry, just wanted to throw it out there.
Yeah, well, so from a research point of view, when participation is difficult to do, overwhelming, and so on, that is identified as huge friction, not only by our research, but it's seen in DAOs and other, and we also have references to OCC, election observers, which also elaborates on that. And it is good succession. I think Adam Dean I can follow up, because I think that's something you have in I don't know, like it's been in your backyard for some time, isn't it? Or am I just wildly guessing?
No. I'm not gonna come up here and like shill my project. I already did that in the chat. But I did want to say that, you know, like there is already the Reach Your People RYP platform by Niels from Hazelpool. So I am a member there, and I get Telegram notifications every time a new governance action comes online. We have like GovActionBot that Alex and Thomas from NBX have been working on, that does Twitter posts every time there's a new gov action. I think there's also a Discord bot inside the Intersect, or a Discord channel in the Intersect Discord. So there's definitely ways that like you could have that notification at your fingertips, but I think what they're all missing is none of them currently show, like for an SPO perspective, you need to vote on this one. And particularly, I think that's because, again, we've only, like, if you look at it, we've only had like 3 governance actions that SPOs were actually required to vote on. So nobody's ever like kind of gone to the depth of figuring out, you know, how to alert particular groups that their vote might be required. But that could be a great feature add for something like RIP or Constitution or the GovAction bot or something like that. Like, hey, who needs to vote on this? SPOs and DREPs. So you could get notifications every time a new GovAction comes online and just quickly go, this requires SPOs and DREPs. This requires CC and DREPs. This requires CC and SPOs. So that way, we could get that in a more decentralized fashion into people's fingertips. Because, like a mobile app would be great, but who's going to develop it? Who's going to pay for it? Who's going to keep funding it? Too often, I think we always are inclined to make it somebody else's job to provide those tools that the ecosystem needs. And then it ends up becoming Intersect or IOG or CF or somebody else that has to do it because nobody else will do it, essentially.
Okay, isn't that what Intersect's for, though, Adam? Isn't that their exact role?
Well, yeah, but I mean, so they already send an email blast with updates about governance actions and stuff. They have a channel in the Discord. So I think those resources are there. It's probably just not advertised well enough, maybe.
Yeah, and they also have the newsletter, which they have a section there that usually covers all governance action and governance related stuff.
Maybe that's a takeaway. Sorry, real quick, Ken, Eric, for you guys on the civics committee, though, is like when a GovAction comes online, put out something from like the Intersect Civics Committee of like, hey, here's who needs to vote. Here's when voting ends. So everybody that might be impacted can at least add it to their calendar to know like kind of when it's time to go out and take action.
Yes, sincerely. Yeah, absolutely, I agree. So Joker, you still have your hands up.
Oh, no, sorry, that's just technical difficulties. I forgot this application doesn't take it down for you. My apologies.
That's life on the mobile platform. No worries. Tevo, your hands up.
I noticed that many platforms eventually, or not all, but are kind of turning into like a subscribe model, or in a sense that you want to be involved and then automating the channel of information sharing. So I'm just wondering, I tried to draft that kind of recommendation, but what is the expected outcome from whatever tool we're using or the Frankenstein standard, which we are all listening? Is it like, yeah, are we looking for some kind of consistent blockchain where we can read messages, but we would need to make it cheap? So I guess somewhere on Hydra, but on other side, or we are looking for something which we can subscribe to, and we have like sophisticated notification system. So which directions, or we're looking at like having our own Twitter in general. So which directions here was like the outcome that we are actually looking for with that recommendation, or all of them?
I think it's probably a little bit of an all the above. One of the interesting things that was at least present in the previous constitution and now no longer being in the constitutional committee, I'll be honest, I'm not as familiar with the current constitution as I was with the first draft of the constitution. But there was this requirement that before you do a governance action, you have to somehow socialize it. But that was never really defined what would count as proper socialization. And I think that's what's led to probably a lot of the friction in governance so far, is a lot of people just see the on-chain action as the first thing, the first indicator that governance is about to happen, and is something that they should be paid attention to. And then all of a sudden they have this like 30-day ticking clock where they have to absorb all that information. There's no chance to iterate or provide any feedback aside from voting no with a rationale. So yeah, like there could be something there where maybe it's just as simple as like, if you're thinking about putting an action on chain, you must publish like a simple metadata transaction that says like, I'm considering a governance action and here is the link to it. So that way people know where the where the socialization platform is, but we're not locked into a single one. You know, I saw mention like GovTool tried it, CGov tries it. Like everybody is doing their own little flavor of it. There's the Cardano forums, there's Twitter, there's all these other places we could talk about it. It could be on my blog, where I'm accepting comments. You know, Yuta did it in a Google Doc to get feedback for his constitution. There's never a clear criteria of what counted as acceptable socialization, but there was this requirement of socialization and community collaboration. So yeah, like maybe there's room for some sort of a standard, for some sort of like an on-chain alert, because I think that's the only commonality that we all have, is we all look at the blockchain, hopefully on at least a semi-regular basis, whereas we might not be scanning the forums or GovTool or the Intersect Discord every day. But we could at least subscribe to like an alert that happens on the blockchain. That should be the ultimate root of trust, I would think.
Thank you for your insight, Adam. Yeah, so bring KDLR, like bring governance closer to the participants, either his wallet or yeah. If you have a good recommendation, I'll put it in there. Meaningful of the time, I have been horrible at this. I already spent 9 minutes more than scheduled. I want to round this up with thank you everybody who have participated in this 1 hour long workshop, giving recommendation and lifting up both solution and frustrations. I have pinned in the chat, as I said earlier, the link where you can upvote and downvote and make prioritizations, and that will be most helpful for us moving forward on recommendation in the report. Do you have something to add, Nano or Tevu?
No, I just want to say thank you very much to everybody who joined us today. And of course, thanks you, Ken, for steering the discussion and, bringing us to 1610. I personally, I feel like we had a wonderful discussion, lots of insights, lots of, knowledge being shared here. And I'm glad that everybody was able to enjoy the discussion. So yeah, that's pretty much what I would say to bring this meeting to a close. And then of course, see you on our next sessions. As link is posted, from the link tree, you can find the various sessions that you're going to have from next week. So please do check it and then join us. Let's discuss CC and the rest that we have to discuss. Thank you very much. Do have a wonderful weekend.
Yes, thank you so much, and have a lovely weekend. Thank you. Bye-bye.